I have the privilege of introducing Dr. Tim Royer. He is a believer in the brain, in the power of the brain, and has studied close to 50,000 brains. He is a leading expert in sleep, attention, anxiety, mood, and peak performance. Dr. Royer began work over 25 years as a head of neuropsychology at a children's hospital, and over the years has evolved into work with top-performing athletes. So let's just talk again about football today, from Monday, a little break. Of the present starters in the NFL quarterbacks, he has worked with 12 of them. In our neck of the woods, he began working with Bryson DeChambeau 9 months before his win in the US Open, and has looked at female brains, those of Annika Sorenstam, Chris Evert, just to name a few. We're super excited to hear and witness actually a live brain hookup from Dr. Tim this morning. So I'd like to present to you Dr. Tim Royer.
Thank you very much. Man, it's great to be with you guys. I've been anticipating this for a while, so this is really good. I met some of you at the booth, and those that I didn't, I hopefully will have some time afterwards to meet. I'm thinking, what is the best time to meet with a group, okay? Go to Vegas. Let's get us all to Vegas, right? Spend 2 or 3 days, fit in some rounds of golf, take in a bunch of education. Then the last day we're here, when we're thinking about getting out of here, right? 8 a.m., let's do it, right? So, I get it. So if you start dozing off, hopefully you won't. I get that, but I do know that 8 o'clock on the last day might be a little tough to focus. So just right out of the chute, if you want to reach out to me, we have cards here that have my direct cell phone, and you can text me, email me, or there's 2 different websites. Forge Inner Armor, which is the program we do for collegiate athletes, as well as we use that in places like the San Francisco 49ers and some other more clinical settings that we work in. Or if you really want to get deep, the other company that does a lot of concierge one-on-one services is Royer Neuroscience. But before I get started, I want to introduce a couple people. I've got Ian back here, he's filming back there. There's Ian. Ian's been working with us for a couple years, and he spends every waking moment at the San Francisco 49ers working in the brain room there, and sees all of the guys. We're right connected to the locker room. We have 6 stations that we come in and we hook up their brains and their visual skills and their breathing and their heart rate every single day, before practice, after practice. And Ian is a trooper. He in the NFL, when season's on, it's 7 days a week, 24/7, travels with the team, the whole deal. And then Adam is our clinical director for Royer Neuroscience, and Adam's been with me for a very long time. And he has a fascinating story of how our roads came together. And he works with some elite executives, pros. We do a lot of work with stem cell. And so there's 2 clinics in Antigua and Monterey where we measure the brains of individuals before they get stem cell. And Adam travels to those places periodically. That's tough, isn't it? And how's that for a job? Hey, I get to go to Antigua and Monterey, Mexico, right? That's a tough job. I'll take that one. But Adam does all the EEG assessments, so it's great to have them here and appreciate everything they're doing. So as we get started, I just want to go through a few things, just give you a little bit of background. How did I end up here at this, golf conference, right, for coaches? And I guess you could go way back, and that would be my father was a coach. He wasn't a golf coach. He was a collegiate football coach, coached at the Naval Academy, University of Maryland, Boston College, and Virginia Tech. And so I've been around coaching my whole life, and I love helping coaches, working with coaches. Kyle Shanahan, who's the coach of 49ers, we've been working together since he was at Washington Commanders, and Back then it was the Redskins. And went with him from there to Cleveland, to Atlanta, and to the 49ers. But at some of the colleges we work with, we not only work with the students, but we also work with the coaches, because it's very important that you guys are spot on with what you're doing with your brain as far as focus and sleep and energy and creativity and all those kind of things that are at the core of the brain. But in my work clinically, first 15 years from about 1990 to 2005, primarily worked in hospital settings, helping physicians with people who have brain tumors and epilepsy and concussion and ADHD and sleep problems and dementia and all these kind of things that involve the brain. And great experience, loved it. Continue. 50% of what we do is clinical. We work with autistic adults. We work with all kinds of different people. The commonality is the brain. The brain connects all of us, right, in all these settings. But in 2005, one of the things that we're known for is what we can do with ADHD. So after being in hospital settings for a long time, I started to see, man, there's a lot of people getting this diagnosis. Just in 15 years, it went from 1 in 20 to 1 in 10 to then, if you're a low-income male, it's 1 in 3 chance that you're going to get diagnosed with ADHD. And we would call that an epidemic, okay? Because that's like, how do you go from 1 in 20 to 1 in 3? And I started to analyze this, and I started to realize, wait a minute, something's off here. We're just looking at behaviors, and nobody's looking at the brain. And I started to see that a third of these people have sleep problems. Another group has anxiety, some have depression, some have learning disabilities, but they're all getting diagnosed with this thing called ADHD. And so I really devoted myself to trying to help people look at their brain and understand what's going on that produces different behaviors that you have. Does that make sense? Behaviors are out here, but it starts in the brain, and there can be all kinds of things that lead to your problem with anxiety, depression, or your player's problem with attention, focus. And it's not always just this one thing in a box. And so I started to realize, hey, let's assess the brain and not just in 10 minutes check a few boxes and send somebody out the door with a medicine. And so then I started to see there's got to be better ways to work with the brain besides just medicating it. It's ridiculous. The brain is one of the most amazing things in the universe. And so what I started to develop some technology that interfaces directly with the brain and can actually teach it to focus, can teach it to sleep, teach it to decrease anxiety. And we're going to do that today. And I'm to hook up somebody's brain, so I'm going to need a volunteer today that you're going to let us look at your brain. Oh, back row, she's ready to go. And after we hook up your brain, we're going to do a lobotomy. So you're good with that? What's your name? Maddie. When it's time, I'm going to have you come up, and we're going to see Maddie's brain up on the screen in real time, all the electrical current. Isn't that pretty cool? That would be kind of fun. So I started to look at these brains and started to realize, man, there's better ways to deal with this brain than flood it with medicines, right? And started to realize we can learn. That's our greatest ability, is to learn. We're learning all the time. In the last 3 minutes, you learn things, whether they're relevant or irrelevant to you. You learned things because your brain took it in. You're learning all the time. If we can teach somebody physics, we can teach them to focus, right? And so what we started to develop clinics. We had about 13 different clinics. We did about 40,000 appointments a year to address these issues with ADHD. And in 2005, 2006, I got a call from a guy in the NBA. And I'm like, well, we deal with ADHD. This is 2005, and anxiety. And he says, hey, I'm in the NBA. He was in the draft that was LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Chris Bosh, Dwayne Wade, one other person, and this guy. So he was number 6 that year in the draft. So pretty darn good, okay? And he called, and he'd been in the NBA for 2 years. And his coach had called him in and said, hey, Chris, you're not doing what we thought you were going to do. And we think you have a problem focusing, and I'd like you to start taking this medicine. Now, how a coach in their office actually has a bottle of Adderall, I have no idea, and why they think that they can give this to this guy. But he didn't know that Chris's story is he'd been on 3 times the dose of medicine earlier in his life, and at the age of 2.5, I'm not joking, I have the report, at 2.5, a doctor diagnosed him with ADHD. 2.5, right? I have 4 adult kids now. They all had ADHD at 2.5, right? At 3.5, they had him on a stimulant. By the time he was 5, he was on 3 times the dose of a stimulant that a child should be on. In his case, rather than stunting his growth, I think it actually did something different to his growth. He ended up being 7 feet tall. And by the time he was in 9th grade, he was ready to drop out of school. And he was 7 feet tall and 196 pounds. Skinny as a rail. He's going to drop out of school. But guess who didn't want him to drop out of school? The basketball coach, right? You guys, the coaches. He said, wait a minute, you're not going anyplace, buddy, okay? So this guy, he kept him around, kind of mentored him. His parents didn't really care if he dropped out of school or not. He went to Central Michigan. He was still very light, but when he left high school, he stopped taking all of his medicines. And he all of a sudden bulked up to about 260 pounds. So 7 feet, 260 pounds. Partway through the year, they play University of Michigan, okay? Chris has a triple-double, okay? That's triple block shots, triple rebounds, triple points. And the NBA starts calling, hey, why don't you come our way? But here he is with this medicine from his his coach, and he's like, I can't do this stuff. So he calls me, and they were going to send him to the summer league because he's not doing well, which is not a good thing to do. And I ended up working with Chris, and within the first 22 games, he scored 20 double-doubles. And by the end of that year, or partway through the year, he made it to the NBA All-Star team. And that was the beginning of the journey of why am I doing sports? Because we can fix these really difficult things. It doesn't take a lot to improve focus at the collegiate level, at the college, at the pro level, to fix anxiety, to improve performance. And we're going to talk through that today. So as we go, you guys hanging with me? Okay. So as we go, let's start with a few things. First of all, we all have some type of prize in mind, right? We have a prize, someplace we want to be. Whether it's you want to be with your athlete, you want your athletes to be a certain place, you want to hold up that trophy at the end of the year, maybe you want to be physically a certain way, in your profession you want a certain way. Do you all have goals? Do you have certain things you want? Does somebody not have a goal in their life? Okay, because that's another lecture, okay? But you all have goals, right? You have things, and as a coach, part of your job, right, is to have a certain type of tangible prize, right? Right? We have these prizes here that we're striving for. We got that? Right? And you guys come along, and you're like, I know how to get there. I have the plan, okay? It's right here. I got the plan, and in here I got my GCAA notes, right? I got I went and listened to all these people, listen to that guy Wednesday morning just ramble on, right? I took notes, and I got all my experiences, right? I've been doing this a long time. I've seen a lot. And I got a plan here that rocks the world, right? You all, I probably, if you don't have it, you're working on it, right? You have a plan for what you're going to do with your student athletes, but also probably with yourself, right? You have a plan for your occupation, maybe a plan for your investments, plan for your family, plan for yourself physically, plan for your relationships, right? You have these plans, right? And you have these prizes, place you want to be, right? You guys tracking with me? So we got our plan here. But there's something that stands in the way between the best laid plans and the prize. And that thing that stands in the way that you have to work with every single day with yourself and with others is this guy, the brain. Whether it's the brain of that athlete that just can't seem to focus, isn't disciplined, or it's your own brain that gets in the way of the prize, right? We have these great desires and the will to win, but where's the will to prepare to win that starts with the brain, right? So I just want to give you a few things about this guy, the brain, okay? It's 3.5 pounds. It's literally the most amazing thing in the entire universe. This thing is incredible, There's nothing like it, ever, what the brain can do, okay? Just a few facts on this thing. There's blood flow that goes in it, and it has blood vessels in it. And it has to have continuous blood flow. Well, it has this little system in it. If something gets blocked up, it can literally like reverse the blood flow and go to other areas of the brain, because it's so important that the brain needs blood, right? Does you know, like when somebody has a stroke, they're not getting blood to the brain. If you took the blood vessels in the brain and put them end on end, they would go 150,000 miles. What, Doc? I just said that. 150,000 miles of blood vessels in your brain. Put that in perspective. We take a trip around the equator, that's 25,000 miles. Wow. Amazing, right? There's chemicals in this brain, neurotransmitters, that cause things to happen. And every second, we have 100,000 chemical reactions happening in our brain. What? And then there's these things called neurons. You have 100 billion, I said that right, 100 billion neurons in your brain. And at the end, there's all these little connections or branches, and they go out and touch each other and make those 100 billion make all these multiple connections. It's estimated that you have over a quadrillion connections in your brain, communication pathways, phone wires. If everybody remembers phones that have wires, okay, going all over the place. That is a quadrillion. That's one with 20 zeros after it. That's more than there are stars in the entire universe, are the connections in your brain. If you don't take anything away from today, I want you to take away is that you're a very special creation. Your brain is an amazing thing, and take care of it. At the end of your life, the thing that you're going to want is your brain. I work with 5 different people that are billionaires, and 5 of the 5 are worried about how their brain functions. They could have anything they want, but they want to make sure at the end the brain is working right. It's important. You got to take care of it. You got to take care of it. Before you were even born, you were producing in your mother's womb. You were making 250,000 neurons a minute. Is that crazy? By the time you're 2, about 95% of your brain was already developed. That's why it's very important early on working with kids and their development. And the other time that the brain is very capable of learning a lot is between about the ages 18 and 23. We can still learn at any time, but it's not coincidental that college tends to happen at that time. One last thing about the brain, and if I'm boring you about the brain, then you need to take your pulse, because the brain is amazing. You are amazing. And even, I want you to take this home, okay? Even your athlete on their worst day is still an amazing creation, how their brain works. Even on their worst day, even you on your worst day. Think about this, 98.6. That's a number, but it's also what? It's our temperature, right? Do you guys think about, hey, oh shoot, I think I'm about 98.3 right now. I need to go up 0.3 of a degree. Do you think about that? You know, some of you are going back to the Midwest or someplace cold, and you're going to get off that plane, and it's going to be like, oh my goodness. Are you going to think about, oh, how do I get back up to 98.6? Last night at 2 a.m., if you weren't at the slots and you were in your bed, were you thinking about 98.6? No. What was doing that? Your brain. And we spend so much time in the conscious arena with the brain, but there's so much going on unconsciously. So let's, one last fact about the brain. Okay, I just love it. I think it's awesome. The more I study the brain, the more I'm like, man, I don't know anything. I got to keep learning more because it's so cool. This is a flash drive. Okay, it's a 1 gigabyte flash drive. It can hold, this flash drive right here, can hold 900,000 pages of text. That's a lot, almost 1 million pages of text on this little flash drive. Okay, now if I took this flash drive and I turned it into a foot, I'd get maybe 10 of these in a foot, okay? So, you know, that would give me, you know, about 9 million pieces of paper, right? Now imagine it at a yard, okay? And now we're starting to get way up there in stacks of paper, right? Now imagine that yard is a football field, okay? Now, you hanging with me? Okay, so this thing is now extended to the length of a football field. We're multiplying 900,000 each time to the length of a football field. Take 184 football fields of this. That's your brain's capacity for memory. And you're like, Doc, I can't even remember what I had for dinner last night, right? You know? But the brain, what it can do in storing biomechanics and all types of things is amazing, right? So let's talk a few things about the brain. This actually, I use this as a title up here, but we have a book coming out in, this is not a book selling tour, but we have a book coming out in the end of January, and if you'd like a free copy of it, just come up and let me know. I'd love for you guys to understand more about the brain and dig deeper into it. But it talks about a lot of things that we're talking about today, except at a much deeper level. But we're going to talk about, first thing, with the, if this thing works, come on. Okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about how this thing operates. So it needs power, okay? It's an electrical device. It needs power. Now, you remember all these things that it's doing. You would, if we tried to make a computer that could do the things the brain would do, the amount of power would probably be the size of a small city that it would take energy-wise. Your brain, when we hook it up to a power source and see what it can do, it only takes about as much as it takes to operate a small flashlight to do all of these things, which is crazy. But the question is, where does all the energy come from? Because it's an electrical device. You guys did not plug your brain in last night. You probably plugged your iPhone in, right, to charge it. But you did not plug your brain in, right? Your brain needs power, but it's getting power. So where does it get power from? If you were listening a couple years ago when I talked, you should know this. But where do we get power from in the brain? What do we need to make energy, electricity? What do you guys need? Come on, you guys got it. Food, yes, you need food. And that's why it's important to have a good balance of proteins and fats and carbohydrates and micronutrients and macronutrients and fiber and all those kind of things, right? But really, that only makes up about 4% of the energy you make. What else do you need besides food? Anybody know what else? Sleep. Oh my goodness. If you go without sleep, by 7 days without sleep, no sleeping, you will go psychotic, and by day 13, you will die. There's not many things on the planet that'll kill you in 13 days, but not sleeping will, okay? Number one thing I do, one of the most important things at elite level sports is sleep. I did a study in the NBA where I worked with 2 entire teams, and we did 400 hormone samples over a 4-year span and tracked their sleep cycles because they travel so much. And what we found is that as sleep deprivation increased, testosterone decreased. And we started the year with these 400 samples, okay? And before they started their crazy travel schedules, the average of their testosterone was like a 24-year-old male, okay? By the time they got to the end of the season, their testosterone levels were equal to that of a 55-year-old male. Almost a quarter of what they started the season with, all because of sleep deprivation. The other thing that we found out with that is once the testosterone hit a certain level, the risk for injury doubled. Because testosterone and sleep are so important to resiliency. Sleep is very important. It accounts for about 5% of the energy. Anybody know what the main thing that accounts for 90% of your energy comes from? Oxygen. Oxygen. Think of what you can't go without. You could have missed the double espresso this morning and still made it, right? Okay? You could have maybe forgot to eat this morning and you're still okay. And maybe you didn't get a good night of sleep. But what happened if I'd stopped giving you oxygen 5 minutes ago? It's all over. Game over. You'd give me everything you own for the next breath of oxygen. Oxygen is so important. And when people talk about breathing in sports and box breathing and all these other things, which are good, they're good things, but they're just scratching the surface. If you would ask Kirk Cousins, who I've been working with since he was at Michigan State, the number one thing that's taken him through his career, he'd say, it's the breathing. It's the breathing, and I learn more about it every year, he would say. If you go to the website, he does about a 10-minute video about our breathing program, the vision program, and the brain program. It's excellent. He's so articulate on it. But oxygen is number one in how we get energy. Now, we get that energy in. This guy is going to be a bugger today. Huh? How about that? So I'm going to have to walk over here, burn all these extra calories. Okay, so you get this energy coming in, and now your brain has to be it's the best conservationist on the planet, the brain. It has to take this energy and has to use it appropriately in certain situations, okay? So we have this thing called our autonomic nervous system. You don't need to remember all of this, but I'm going to tell you all the things that you struggle with between the plan and the prize. We could track it back if we went upstream, not downstream, okay? So the mechanics of the stroke, what I'm thinking over the putt, all those different things that are happening in the golf arena, those are all downstream behaviors. Upstream, where it all starts, is your autonomic nervous system. If you can become experts in understanding the autonomic nervous system and how it relates to behaviors and particularly performance, it will change how you work with athletes. It'll make them optimize their potential. So the autonomic nervous system is this thing that's moving up and down constantly in how it's distributing energy. It decides whether it needs to go super fast or whether it needs to go super slow. So let's, once it does that, let's see what it then does. When it goes fast, it changes my pupils. My pupils literally dilate, and they become very focused and very narrow on what's in front of me, okay? That's not a good thing when I'm trying to look over here and look over here at the same time if all of a sudden my peripheral field has shut down completely. Or the other thing that happens when my pupils dilate is I lose my depth perception. Do you think depth perception is important to golf? Does anybody? Nah, who needs depth perception, right? If I go into sympathetic, I will lose my depth perception because my brain says, I could care less about that little white ball or that flag. I'm concerned about you and that snake that's right in front of you. So we become very focused. It's a preservation thing, okay? My heart starts racing. My muscles tense. I release adrenaline, which causes me to absorb a ton of sugar so I can get energy. All these things happen when the autonomic nervous system goes fast. Get it? Now, when it goes slow is when I rest, recover. You ever have a big meal at like Thanksgiving and then all of a sudden an hour later you want to like fall asleep? Why is that? Digestion happens in these slow states. But the biggest thing that happens is sleep. Sleep is a parasympathetic or a slow response, and it activates the different mechanisms this way, okay? So if we go back and look at this, let's start looking at a couple problems. If somebody can't sleep well, you guys got this class, okay? If you can't sleep well, where are they on this continuum? What is the problem? Is it going too fast and sympathetic or going too slow and parasympathetic? If a person is having a sleep problem, come on, you can do it. Yes, boom. So you go to the doctor's office and, doc, man, I can't sleep. I just can't sleep. And he's like, here, take this, right? A little bit of Xanax, a little Lunesta, whatever. What is that chemical going to do? Slow you down. It slows you down. Medicine is very simple. It does one of two things, whether it's for your blood pressure or whatever it is. It either speeds you up or it slows you down, okay? And so one of the things happen with a lot of athletes is they get anxious, and they find ways to deal with their anxiety. I mean, the level of marijuana use is through the roof, okay? And it's not solving the problem, and it's eventually is going to increase depression because it activates the same brain waves that are at the core of depression. Yes, it makes you calm, pulls you into parasympathetic, and you get out of that anxiety that's troubling you, but you don't solve the issue. Tracking with me? Then if I can't focus and I go to the doctor, what do you think? I can't concentrate. My brain feels like it's kind of slow and in the mud. That's a parasympathetic thing, okay? Or I don't have energy, adrenal fatigue. That's a parasympathetic thing. So you go to a doctor and they give you what? An amphetamine, okay? They give you something to speed you up. Adderall, Ritalin, those things speed you up, okay? So these chemicals move us up and down, but we're better than that. We can move these things ourselves if we just learn to move them, okay? So when we look at the autonomic nervous system, we have the tendency to go up and down. If somebody is overthinking a putt, are they in sympathetic or parasympathetic? Sympathetic. You guys, come on, you got this. Okay, they're in sympathetic, right? And I need them to be dead center. I don't want them to be asleep, but I need them to be in this sweet spot. Tracking with me? Okay, let's have, what was your name again? Maddie? Maddie, come on up, and Adam's going to start looking at your brain, and we're going to see if Maddie has parasympathetic or sympathetic or what she's got going on there. Okay. So let's talk about this guy. Come here. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Come back. So this guy, okay? This is what gets us in trouble, is this lion, okay? If I see this lion, I am going to go into what? Sympathetic or parasympathetic? Sympathetic. I'm going to go fast to protect myself, okay? And when I'm doing that, there's all these reactions are going to happen, okay? So let's talk about how that works with the lion, okay? So the lion, I have to use something in order to interact with my environment. And that something, there's 5 of them, and they are our what? Senses. I use my senses. If I had no senses, I could not interact with the environment, and my autonomic nervous system would not know what to do, right? I need my senses to perceive the environment. So those senses, and the biggest one is vision. And I've learned over the years with athletes, we have to enhance the coordination of their eyes so that the signals going to the autonomic nervous system are accurate. My brain's telling me that that cup is 30 feet away, but my eyes are telling me it's 20 feet away. And there's a conflict inside of me because I don't have good binocular vision. And I know I shouldn't hit it this light, but I feel like I need to hit it light, even though it says 30 feet, right? Why? Because my visual fields, the muscles that control binocularity, are off, and it could be because of a sympathetic response. You take in 11 million pieces of information a second. 10 million are visual. The low-hanging fruit that most, both collegiate and pro athletes are missing is how important it is to develop ocular motor strength under stress so that you don't become tunnel vision. You see the lion, the brain activates a signal, the electricity in the brain goes faster, all of a sudden your hypothalamus releases a chemical to something called your pituitary gland, which releases a chemical to your adrenal glands, and now your body asks for a bunch of sugar and you have a bunch of energy to do what? Run from the lion, right? And the cascade of things that happen looks like this, is you have upstream, we have a neurological autonomic nervous system response. Then we have a psychological, physiological, there we go. We have a physiological response. So I see the lion. Neurologically, the ANS says, we got a problem here. Then physiologically, what happens? The heart races, my breathing shortens, okay? And then psychologically, I feel a certain way. You know, most of the time people that end up in the emergency room for panic attacks, or not for panic attacks, for heart problems are actually having panic attacks, right? Because their physiological response feels like I can't breathe or something's wrong with my heart. And they think they're having a heart attack, but they're actually physiologically, they're in a sympathetic state. Then you have a psychological, I am stressed, right? And then you have an emotional, I am now anxious. And then you have a behavioral. This all happens in literally milliseconds, and you run, right? That's what happens. Now, if that works and you're really there is a crisis situation, that's great. But what about if I'm just sitting at my desk, right? What about if I'm just playing a round of golf, right? What about if it's the final set at Wimbledon? What about if it's the last putt on hole 18? Are those going to kill you? Are they lions? No, they're not a lion. But what we have is this thing as a human that most animals don't have. So the zebra, there's a great book, Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers. Why zebras don't get ulcers, right? And who should get ulcers? Zebras should. They have no defense mechanism except to run and their stripes, right? And they're being chased by the real guy all the time, right? And they do the chase, they go into sympathetic, but what happens after the chase? They go to the watering hole and they go back into parasympathetic. They don't go down to the watering hole and say, how's my 401k? Oh, are my kids going to make it into Stanford? What's going to happen tomorrow? They don't go into the what ifs. Anybody have any what ifs? They don't go into the what ifs this happens. They don't go, what about this that happened? Right? They don't do all that. But the human brain, the frontal lobe, lets you go into the future, and it lets you go into the past, and lets you be in the present, all within seconds. I can say, imagine your third grade teacher. Boom. What's life going to be like in 10 years? Boom. Right? Isn't it amazing that you can do that? But it's also problematic that you can do that. Because when you're over that putt, I don't want you in the future. I don't want you in the past. Where do I want you? Right here, right now, present. Think of some of your golfers. Think of yourself. When you're over that thing, how much of you is really there? And what percentage is what if, what about, that's in the future or in the past? And how can we get the biological, physiological, neurological to be 100% here? If you were to watch these quarterbacks that I work with, you would see that when they, if you could see Kirk pregame, if you're ever watching the field before they start, you'll see that Kirk's out there and he's down on the ground and he's touching the grass and he's kind of feeling it. And he's breathing, and he's smelling. He's taking all of his senses in, and it's a practice that we do to bring him here. Not what if, what about. You gotta be here, 100% here. That makes sense, right? But this guy can create a scenario. Like right now, if I put the right scenario out there, you will have the same physiological, neurological, and behavioral response as if a lion was here. Does that make sense? Do you understand? And that's the problem in sports, is the autonomic nervous system. The best thing we have is the frontal lobe, but the worst thing we have is the frontal lobe because it keeps us from being present. It keeps the plan from making it to the prize because the processor's off, right? And we need to find that interface that changes it. And so one of the things, I'm going to miss that one of these times, okay, jumping up here. And that's going to be pretty, okay? But the thing that we need to look at is we have strategies. All of you have strategies to deal with the behaviors. And what I want to encourage you to think about, to adjust your thinking, is where you got to intervene is at the neurological level, okay? Is my strategies the further downstream, think upstream brain, downstream swing, okay? Down here, up here. What's happening before I get there? What we like to do is put this in a compartment and say, who really cares what's going up here? Your brain and body does. And if it's in sympathetic, it doesn't care about the white ball. It could care less. If you're worried about the exam you're going to take, you're going to find it very hard to go out and play a round of golf, right? And if your system's out of balance. And so a lot of times we intervene up in these stages, but we're not intervening at the neurological level. And that's where we need to make changes. We need to work with the energy and how the brain is functioning. And the reason those aren't as effective, and I'm not against sports psychology, anything, all very important things, visualization, all important things. But the reason they aren't as effective is there's something called latency or lag from the actual neurological event and the behavior. And it's that lag that keeps you from learning. So like when you were a little kid and you were learning the alphabet, your teacher had to say, when you said the letter A, which was an abstract shape, they had to reinforce you right away, that's the letter A. You didn't get down to the letter D and they said A, because that would have been latency and you would have mixed it up. You needed to know what the letter A was. Makes sense? It had to happen right at that time. With the technology that we have and that we use, we can work at the neurological level to affect the downstream, okay? So let's go ahead and before we start Mandy here, I just want to show you a couple different things, okay? So when we talked about the eyes, this is a measurement of the eye muscle strength at a university that I was at a few months ago, where we looked at the eye muscle strength of over 100 different athletes across different domains. And this is in an area called convergence, which is an aspect of binocularity, which these are all people that have great facilities that they get to use, the weight rooms, different trainers, those kind of things. And these are muscles in their eyes, okay? Where they need to be is where the yellow line is, okay? So go back to how are we taking in information? What do we use for the brain, the autonomic nervous system, to be able to do its job? We use our 5 senses. And what is the most important one of those senses? Vision. And my muscle control is important to my vision. And here we got athletes that are, on full rides, big investment in a lot of different ways. And nobody's looking at their eyes because there's no reason. This is such low-hanging fruit that they shouldn't be above the yellow line. That's where you should be. Like a good example is at the 49ers where Ian works. All of those guys are up in the 80s now. Now, they didn't start there, okay? But fix this. You can fix this in a short period of time. So this is 8 weeks later. 8 weeks later, same group. Okay, if you did this in the weight room, people would come in and say, okay, what are you doing? We need some tests, okay? Give me a sample because you're using something. Because there's no way you can improve your muscle strength by that much. But with the eyes, nobody's doing anything with it. And you can fix it so quickly. They're seeing a totally different world. So if they're seeing a totally different world, how do you think that affects their nervous system, their autonomic nervous system, if now the information lines up correctly with what their brain's telling them? Do you think they're more stressed? No, they're less stressed. Then let's look at the power situation, which is how we're taking in oxygen. Okay, 200 is kind of an optimal state to be in an achievement number. So we have athletes go to these kiosks. So they have a kiosk, they share the kiosk. That's what makes the program very affordable, okay? Whereas like somebody like Kirk, he has his own kiosk, okay? But those athletes I showed you, that was at Liberty University. They have 600 athletes. They're student athletes. And they have 5 kiosks, and they all use the kiosk, and they run through the training, okay? So at the kiosk, when you do your breathing, you have to get a score. You need to be above 200, okay? Just to be giving the brain and the body the right amount of power. You want your athletes to have power, right? Energy. Where do we get most of our energy from? Breathing, right? So they're not even close in how they're breathing. This is 6 weeks later, just teaching these collegiate athletes to breathe. What's going on now with their power? It's more available. Their brain is more sharp. When they see something that used to be a lion to them, it's not a lion to them because they can handle that. Tracking with me? Okay. So let's go ahead and, I should say this, and then we'll go to, is it Mandy? No, it's Maddie. So I know we're all concerned about how well they putt and how well they hit, but I know you guys are far deeper than that. You're trying to train young adults to be adults. They're not all going to go into the pros, right? They're going to have careers, and you're trying to train them to be something different. Here's a study of 11,000 people that all you're doing is training them to breathe correctly, change their power, how they're bringing in energy. And not just a simple box breath, but you're teaching them kind of what we call a dynamic resilient breath that flexes with the environment. This is 11,000 people, and these are the changes that happened. Focus, 25% increase. Sleep, improvement by 30%. Calmness, 38%. Decrease in anxiety, 46%. Fatigue, 48%. And depression, 56%. What's the biggest problem on college campuses today? Anxiety and depression. That's why they're dropping out, okay? We can not only help your student athletes be good at their game, okay? But think of a bigger level. And just doing these things on your own, you don't have to work with us, but thinking about this differently. How do I help them as a whole person? And how does it all come out so that we get the prize? Tracking? Okay. So, let's look at Maddie here. You guys ready to look at Maddie's? Oh, we're going to first start with breathing. Is that okay? So you're going to breathe first. Okay, so we got Maddie up here, and she's got a breathing belt on, so we can measure what her breathing's doing. See, breathing belt. And then she's got a sensor on her finger that is going to pick up what's going on with her heart, okay? And program pulling. Let's see. Okay. So let's watch her just breathe for a second. Okay. Isn't this fun? I know it's 8 a.m., right, after 3 days in Vegas, but we're having fun, I hope. Okay, so this is her. This is Maddie. Where's she getting most of the energy that she's going to need to survive her entire life? From her breathing, and that is the yellow line. The yellow line is Maddie's breathing, okay? Maddie's breathing 10.43 breaths a minute at this current time, okay? Now 11.78. Now, there's an intricacy between your breathing and your heart. They're always doing a dance. Your heart is so dependent on your lungs. If you ever get a heart transplant, hopefully nobody needs one, a lot of times they'll do a lung transplant at the same time because the two are so connected, okay? So we're looking at these two things together, and we're calculating based on how she's breathing what her heart is going to be using as far as energy. Is the heart in a sympathetic, parasympathetic, or an ideal state which is called coherence? Can you pause that for me, Adam? Okay, so now she's at 17 breaths a minute, okay? So Maddie's, if you were up there, you'd probably be doing the same thing. So it's not just Maddie, okay? But she's breathing a little bit faster. You guys got that? And ideally, the correct in the respiratory system, for a balanced respiratory system of sympathetic and parasympathetic, just in the respiratory, there's about 14 systems, but the respiratory system should be about 6 to 8 breaths a minute. Okay? So, what would you say about the respiratory system in relation to sympathetic and parasympathetic? It's in a sympathetic state. Okay, and the other thing about the respiratory system is imagine this is a fuel line going to an engine, which it is. Okay? And if you can think of that yellow up and down as a fuel line, what would you say about the consistency of the distribution of fuel to the engine? Is it always the same for Maddie, or is it varying? It's varying. It's going up and down, right? And so imagine if that was happening to the fuel line to your engine in your car. That you got a little bit of gas, and then you get a lot of gas. A little bit of gas, a lot of gas. What would happen to your engine? It would be kind of inefficient, right? So this is her most important thing, is how she's bringing in that oxygen. And so we got to get it more consistent. So then I can look at what her heart's doing, which are the three variables: the left, the right, and the center. And now that you're experts on the autonomic nervous system, it doesn't take much. You can see that we have the sympathetic over here on the right, which should be less than 5%. And it's 33. If you walked into, and it's unfortunate that the starting quarterback at the 49ers got hurt the other day, but if you walked in, you would have seen that individual, the sympathetic was about a 2%. And the parasympathetic was about 2%. And the middle was 96%. He didn't start that way. This is like 20 minutes before taking the field. I don't know about you, but I'd be a little nervous going on to Levi Field, right? As in front of national television, the quarterback of the 49ers. What? You kidding me? Keeping the heart in complete center. I got a picture on my phone from Kirk before his game in Minnesota, and he sits at his locker and puts this device on his finger, and it sends me his heart rate, his breathing, his skin conductance, his temperature. And he's up at 98% on this. I mean, talk about lions. They weren't playing the Lions, okay? But there's lions, right? No. He's controlling the autonomic nervous system by his breathing. So let's give Maddie an exercise that I want all of us to do, okay? So let's do this. I want you to put your hand on your stomach. We're all going to become one with Maddie here. It's not just her, okay? It's all of us, right? Hand on your stomach. And I want you to think about the mechanics of breath. The way that Maddie's breathing, when she's breathing fast, is she's taking in the same amount of oxygen, but she's doing it in a very fast, very shallow breath. So I need to create a deeper breath so I can decrease the number of breaths. Make sense? Short amplitude, a lot of breaths. High amplitude, less breaths. Less work on the heart, the whole thing. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to get my dang stomach out of the way so that my lungs can open up. And inside your lungs, you have these things called alveoli. There are 300 million in each lung. You have 600 million alveoli, and they're like catcher's mitts taking in oxygen. When we breathe real shallow, we're only using about 1/10 to 1/4 of them, and the rest is interfaced with carbon dioxide, which is very toxic and produces a sympathetic response to the body. So we've got to get the carbon dioxide out and get the oxygen in all the way down into the deep recesses of the lungs and get to all those alveoli. So what we're going to do is we're going to take our bellies, hand on the stomach. I don't even want you to think about breathing, all of you people that are ahead of the curve here, starting your box breath, okay? I want you to just move your stomach. So we're going to go out, nice and slow. That's always attractive. Hold it, nobody's looking. Hold it, and then pull your stomach back into your spine slowly. Okay, ready? Out, nice and slow. We're just doing movement, biomechanics. Hold it, back into the spine. Slowly, okay? One more. Out. Hold it, back in. You guys got that feel of the biomechanics. You guys are all coaches, of course you do, right? You got the feel. Now we're going to layer the breath on, but the movement comes first. When you're first learning, you have to first get the movement. Don't let the breathing get ahead of the movement. Let the breathing follow the mechanics. So now as I inhale, it's going to be as my stomach's going out, so like a balloon. So I'm going to inhale, move my stomach, exhale, mechanically move my stomach in. Okay, nice and slow. Let's do 3 of those. Ready? Out. Hold it. In. Out as I inhale. Hold, and then exhale. Pull it back in. One more. And then back in. Okay, let's let Maddie go, okay? And let's all breathe with her. We're going to breathe with her for about 1.5 minutes, okay? So Maddie, I want you nice and slow. Stomach out. Slow it down. There you go. Hold it, and then back in. Nice. Great, Maddie. Okay, let's do that again. That's fantastic. Out, nice and slow. Nobody faint on me if you feel like you're going too slow. Okay? Exhale. There you go. Good job. Inhale. Hold it. Exhale. We're all working with Maddie here, right? Anybody notice what her breaths are at right now? Inhale, respiration rate. Hold. Exhale. Okay, let's nice and smooth. You got a couple just undulations there. You're not inhaling and exhaling, I think. There you go. Thank you. Let's pause it there. Okay, so for Maddie, what happened to Maddie's stress? The sympathetic that was 33%. Does anybody want to look at what? Oh, excuse me, she's at 5%. Did we change anything? She's still on the stage, right? Hey, let's give her a round of applause, right? go, Maddie, 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 Maddie. Okay, great, nice job. You're good. You're doing good. Okay, and we're getting to your brain in a second. Okay, so these people that volunteer is like, really? Now look at all this pressure. But she did so good, didn't she? Did I change anything? You guys didn't go any place. We didn't all like hide our eyes, right? You're still here. She's different. If you looked at the cells in her body, they are different right now. Her pupils are different. How she's releasing insulin is different. She's digesting food differently. She's dealing with inflammation differently. And all we did was change her breath. Okay, now when you get really good at this, really good, we then integrate that into the swing. Because rather than the swing be a downstream component, and this is like something I don't even think about, and they become in conflict with each other, what happens if I could breathe in such a way that when my breath is at a perfect parasympathetic response, focus response, it strikes the ball. And I could time that out perfectly. We have a great video on the site. We can't show it today because we don't have time. But of an LPGA golfer that was on the tour for over 15 years. And she talks about how breathing changed her game. And she wishes she had it back in the beginning. She goes, because I played so many rounds of golf stressed. She goes, now I play golf and I'm just there. It's just me and everything that I've practiced over the years. So let's look at Maddie's brain. And as we go to look at her brain, let's explain a couple things. Okay, we're moving. We're all in the mail here. Okay, you guys hanging with me? Okay, so let's talk about the brain. Let's explain the brain and look at Maddie's brain in less than 5 minutes. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so the brain works off of different speeds, 0 to 32 hertz. A hertz is a sine wave and how many times it cycles in a second. Okay, so a 1 hertz speed of brainwave activity means 1 sine wave in 1 second. What do you think 24 hertz is? It's 24 sine waves in 1 second. So 0 to 12, or you can't be 0, 1 to 12 hertz of brainwave activity or speeds. Isn't that cool? That's Maddie's brain. We're going to see something else about it in a second. But isn't that amazing? You're looking at her brain, okay, right now. And these bottom frequencies, oh, this is great, Maddie. You got this right here for me, okay? These bottom, we're going 4 to 12 because 0 to 4 is when you're sleeping. So we have 4 to 12 up here. And those are peaks of slow waves or parasympathetic activity. 4 to 8 has to do with your recovery. You know, you use different things for recovery. This is like real deal recovery, okay? 8 to 12 is your creativity. Very important to be creative, okay? And then once you get out of 12, now 12 to 20 is like the perfect speed in the brain. It's like where it can be a marathon runner, be focused, it can go for long periods of time, and super creative at the same time. Like it's a perfect speed. Think about it in your car when you're driving on a long trip and you want to be a certain speed for conservation of energy. For the brain, it's 12 to 20 hertz, okay? 20 hertz and higher, those are for the lion, okay? That's where the lion comes in, okay? It's there, it's waiting to be used, but I'm not going to hack it to do normal life because if I do, it's going to wreak havoc on the rest of my body, right? We don't just go access that so I can cram for the exam and get it done, right? We need to be able to only use that when we need it. That's lion chasing activity, okay? So let's say, and you can see a couple little spikes here, right? You see how those spiked up? That was moments that we had, you know, where, you know, if there was some stress there, it popped up. And Maddie may not even known that happened. But a couple things before I leave this, okay? And we show you kind of a distribution that you can understand. This is happening 24/7. From the time she was born, or even before she was born, until the time she dies, this electrical current is going on. That's amazing. I mean, I've seen, now I'm up to about 80,000 brains. I still am like, wow, come on, are you kidding me? And I don't know what your background is, what you believe and stuff, but I love this phrase. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And how you came to be here and what your experience is on that, but whatever you look at, you cannot walk away from, You are an amazing creature, how it works. And every student that you work with is fearfully and wonderfully made. They have a certain beauty to their brain. And the other thing about this is there will never be, from the beginning of time to the end of time, a brain that looks like that. It's just impossible. So there might be millions of Maddies that walk this face of this earth, but there will only be one, that Maddie, that matches that. That's cool. That is cool. And just because Maddie walks into their doctor's office with 6 other people who have a sleep problem doesn't mean that they all need the same thing. Please take that home with you. It's just because one of your students is having a problem with attention or anxiety doesn't mean they all need the psychiatrist to give them the exact same medicine. No, 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 no. You're cheapening the most amazing thing. It's like we're taking this beautiful work of art and just saying, oh, that's just like everybody else. No, it's not. Not. Maddie, I have to see what her brain's doing. So can you hit number 2 for me? Let's give her a reset because I've been talking about her. There we go. Okay, gotcha. Okay, there's a lot going on here. Okay, so does that continuum look similar to you? Okay, that fast and slow. So I'm now going to look at what are the distribution of those different brain waves in there, and what are they doing under each category, okay? So let's go ahead and hit pause for a second. So we give Maddie a break there. Okay, so I first want to look at her ability to recover. And yes, you can use HRV for that, but this is really at the neurological functioning. Right now, her theta is actually a little bit higher. She's a little bit more tired than she probably normally would be. I don't know what she's been doing at night with the slots and that kind of stuff, but this number right here should be right around 100 to 110. If you're below 110, or 100, you have a major sleep issue. If you're above that, like 120-ish, the brain's super tired. It's super hard for it to focus, okay? And so right now is not the time I'd want her to take a test and measure her attention, because I can tell you that right now it's very difficult for her focus. That is compromising her level of creativity, okay? Her creativity should be above 100, and it's at 85. It's okay, but if I could pick up some of the slack in the other one and give it to the creativity, that would be pretty cool. And then the ability to get into the zone and stay in the zone. Those are those sets of brainwaves we talked about. Her measure of those brainwaves, they should be above 100, and right now they're 69. So she's just tired. She's still going to function fine. She's still going to get on her plane appropriately and all that kind of stuff. But there's going to be some taxing on the system because her brain's just tired, and it's less creative, and it's not in the right focus state, okay? Or maybe these things are more long-standing for her that we need to help her improve. So on the parasympathetic side, we don't have as much balance as we need to have, right? So then what happens to the sympathetic side? So we first start off with stress. I need this to be less than 100, okay? And you heard about some of the different people that I've assessed, okay? Number 1 in the world in golf, number 1 in the world in tennis. These individuals have about a 65 on the stress number. They just don't see lions. They just don't. They can be at Wimbledon and they're in a tiebreaker and they still don't see lions. So the stress waves aren't going out of control. They're staying at the 65 range. And then obsessiveness, now the brain's getting faster. What does it do as it gets faster? It goes from stress to now it gets very obsessive. And it starts to really get narrow in its focus. We want that less than 100. That's at 298. So because there's not a lot of recovery in the brain right now, the brain's kind of just working off of jet fuel, working off of adrenaline. And in doing that, that's making the brain be a little bit more obsessive. And then the last part is the fight, flight, or the crisis state. These are if I hooked a lot of you up, you'd have some of these high, okay? We need to go after these because if I'm going to work downstream with a certain behavior and the upstream is out of balance, I'm not going to make it to the prize, right? There's something that's becoming in the way, okay? So we need to get those down. We will stop there with that, and I'll take some questions because I want to be respectful of your time. I don't have a lot of time for questions, but that is us looking at the focus side of what we do. We talked about power, which is breathing. We don't have time to get really into the deep nuances of the brainwave activity, but focus is going to be impacted by that. And we talked about precision, which is vision. Yes, sir. What's your name?
Chris.
Chris, what's your question?
So athletes like Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, Kobe, they all said like in interviews a bunch of times that they don't sleep very much. So, and they're some of the best performers under pressure maybe ever. So are they just big liars? Or what's going on there?
Yeah, you're going to find that there's some discrepancies there. A lot has to do with sleep is broken up into 2 stages. So you have your, and please don't just rely on your smart watches, because that's not how you measure sleep. You need an EEG, which we have a mobile device that lets you measure sleep. But the first 4 hours of sleep should be all about deep sleep, and that's where you make human growth hormone and testosterone. And if you're able to get that window physically, you can still perform. But it's the next window, which is the next 4 hours. So the first 4 hours of sleep, 90% of it is deep sleep. And that's so if you're in the cave running from the lion, you can be able to run more after 4 hours, okay? But the next 4 hours of sleep is where you do REM sleep, rapid eye movement, and that's all about your brain. That's kind of the long-term investment. That's your memory functioning. That's your processing speed. These are very crucial cognitive elements that the executive says, well, I only need 4 hours of sleep. Maybe, but you're not putting your investment in the right place. So the first 4 hours is like how much cash is in your wallet right now. The last 4 hours is what's in your 401k. What's your future? Now, you'll see a lot of discrepancy. Like LeBron at times has talked about how he needs 9 hours of sleep. Roger Federer is famous, which I think when you look across all sports, the person who's been the most consistent for the longest amount of time, I would say, is Federer. And he says if he doesn't sleep more than 10 hours a night, he can't play tennis correctly. So you'll see some discrepancies on that, and some of that has to do with how much mental energy they're using versus just physical energy. So I would argue, based on what I've seen hormonally in the brains of athletes, that you have to have them up to around 8.5 hours of sleep a night. Kirk, one of the things that's probably changed his career was he was starting at 7 hours of sleep. Now he sleeps 9 hours a night. And a lot of our quarterbacks that we work with, a lot of our golfers, tennis players, we get them into a better sleeping pattern, and the brain starts working better for them. So I know that probably didn't fully answer your question, but go ahead. What's your question?
I know a lot of our players like to listen to music when they practice, when they warm up. I mean, does that have an effect on what's going on in their brain, stuff like that?
Yeah, sometimes it's a distraction from the noise. So if your brain is going fast and I can do something to distract, it's like a Band-Aid. It's not fixing the autonomic nervous system. They should be able to be alone with their thoughts, but if that helps them, that's temporary, but I would only know by looking at what their nervous system is doing, okay? So everybody could be different. Somebody, that music is putting them in the perfect spot. Somebody, it's keeping them from addressing a bigger issue, because every brain is different. And so analyzing what their heart doing, their breathing, those kind of things while they're doing that is really the upstream component to that type of adaptive behavior that you're doing. So there isn't a one-size-fits-all for that. Some people do benefit from that, but some people it's actually avoidance of something bigger. Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Is there a correlation between what state someone's in when they're on the course and they're like, I can't eat, I just can't even, like, don't even show me any food, and they haven't eaten maybe in 4 hours?
Mm-hmm.
Are they then in more of a sympathetic state because they're
That's a good answer. That's a good answer. So where do we digest food? In what state? Parasympathetic. Yeah. What happens to most people that take an amphetamine, a stimulant? I'm going to get to this answer. When you take Ritalin, Adderall, Concerta, what happens to your ability to eat? What happened to Chris? Right? He couldn't eat because he was being pushed into sympathetic as a way to focus. That's what the medicine does, and that's why it suppresses appetite. Your athletes that can't eat I have to look at their brain, or we have to look at the data, but I'm pretty sure that they're in a sympathetic state because the food can't digest, and they're not moving it through their system. So it's creating a whole bigger issue. So they're not 100% with you, okay? Let me take one or two other, let me finish. I'll take one or two questions after this, but I'm offering the ability that if you're interested, I have about 6 to 7 open trips over the next year that if you'd like me to come to you and talk to you and assess your players on, we're just going to do vision assessments, we're not going to do everything. Just let me know. I have a few slots open for that. I'd love to do that, no cost to you, okay? But I'm very committed to helping this population because while we're helping them with sports, this is going to help them for life. And the bigger things we do, like pro sports and those things, are really great for us as a company. But we also have a passion to work in the collegiate arena, and setting up these things that they can share equipment really helps them access something that's really that high-level people are doing. But as long as they're willing to share, and you're willing to have them share that piece of equipment and set up a schedule to do that, you can access the same kind of things that some of these elite athletes do. So if you're interested, I don't have a ton of slots open, but I do have some this year for some travel. A lot of times I live in Jacksonville, and I have to go to San Francisco twice a month. So I'm doing a lot of in-between stop-offs, so let me know. I'll take one more question, and then we'll finish up. Any other questions? Oh, yes, sir.
So with the breathing,
yeah.
I've been told when you breathe in, go through the nose and then out through the mouth. Does that matter?
There is some benefit to that because you're adding moisture through the way that your nose works and that whole respiratory piece is you're going to be adding moisture to the air that's coming in, and so it's going to be a little bit easier on your lungs. What I like, and here's the thing, if you're not going to just take this home to work with this, okay, is I have all my athletes really work on breathing in, whether they want to breathe through their mouth or nose, doesn't matter to me, okay? But let's say we breathe through our nose. But the big one is when they exhale, is have them exhale out their mouth so they can hear themselves. So they can hear the inhale. And no matter what's going on, no matter how loud it gets, I'm talking about people in huge stadiums with massive amounts of noise, guess what they can still hear? And if you see some of these athletes that I'm working with in these, very loud settings, they're listening to, because for them, that's that trigger of, I'm getting the carbon dioxide out. You have to get the carbon dioxide out to create the space. So teach them, just teach that. Just teach, and then inhale. And it's not just take a breath. Please don't say that anymore to your athletes, okay? Just take a deep breath, okay? It takes more than one deep breath, okay? It takes a series of breaths, okay? And in between the shots, which hopefully shots only going to be a couple seconds, and hopefully they only have 140 seconds of shots, you have a 4-hour round. So what are you doing with the other 3 hours and 57.5 minutes? You should be breathing. And you should do it in a way that you're walking down the course, there's a hill, and I know I need to speed up my breathing a little bit because my heart's going to be compromised, so that when I get up to the green, I'm not out of breath and I'm in a balanced state. But work on the exhale. If you really want to get fancy, work on that with when they impact the ball. Not the because you're in a crisis state. That is not when you want to hit a ball, okay, or throw a pitch or throw a football. You guys, it was great. I'd love to hopefully interact with you guys down the road. If we do this again, we'd love to talk maybe some about you as coaches and how to prevent burnout and some different things like that, because I know it's a very difficult thing. You have a lot on your plate. Hopefully this information, though, will also not translate just to your players, but to yourself, okay? We're here as a resource if you need anything. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.